Good evening, everyone. We're just opening up the event, and I think we'll give it one more minute and then we'll get started. We are recording this event. I am going to go ahead and, well, once our panelists start talking, I will pin you for everyone. So yeah, thank you all for coming. We're excited. This is our first event of the year, and by our and we, I mean the College Advisory Committee. We are a group of parents. I am on behalf of the committee. I'm here going to moderate tonight. My name is Molly Chihawk, and I have a junior at BCC and an 8th grader coming up next year. And then my friend here, Tina Cusack, is also a member of the committee, and she'll be helping to moderate the Zoom chat and let everybody in. So feel free to use the chat robustly during the session. You can drop questions for our panelists. We were just chatting that we want this to be a really interactive session. Also, please, a couple points. Please take a look at the email. Keep your eyes out for our emails. We send monthly updates with our upcoming events. So you do have those in your email if you subscribe to BCC Net. Since this is our first event, just reminding everyone that we use that listserv as our primary promotional channel. All our events are free. You can feel forward to forward them. We want to make these resources that we have collected and are facilitating available to as many people as possible. That's one of our primary goals as a committee. So on that note, let's get started. So tonight we're joined by 2 area college counselors who bring a wealth of experience. And so they're going to talk to us about the most important thing that they want folks to know about the college application process. And then we're going to open it to questions. I have questions sourced over time for them from parents. And I also, again, I really encourage you to make use of this time with them and ask your questions. And we will be moderating that. So you can drop them in the chat. You can use the Zoom hand. And we will manage that. So with us tonight, we have Deb Felix, who is a college counselor at Felix Educational Consulting, and she was the director of admissions at Columbia University and spent 3 decades as an admissions consultant in a variety of schools across the country. And Jody Siegel is an area college counselor out of College Bound. CollegeBound-MD is their website. And so she has been working in undergrad admissions, worked in undergrad admissions for 15 years at GW, among other schools, just has a wealth of experience in admissions, and then now is bringing it to consulting with students during their college application process. So a huge thank you. Jody Siegel, also her daughter just graduated from BCC last year. Deb, I actually don't know your association with BCC.
Yeah, my son graduated from BCC.
Great. So we have two comrades in our mix here. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Deb to get started to share her thoughts on what is the most important thing she wants folks to know about the college application process.
All right. So here it is. The most important thing I want you to know about the college process, the application process, and the search process is that you will get in where you should be. You will get in where you should be, which means fit is the most important thing. Okay, so, and by fit, I mean you want to be going to a college that isn't a good fit academically. It's not too hard for you. It's not going to crush you academically, but it's also not going to be too easy. It's going to challenge you academically. Socially, it will be a good fit. You'll find your peeps there. You'll make friends for life. And third, extracurricularly, the college will have everything you're looking for, be that sports teams you're looking for, other extracurricular activities, internships in the summer or during the school year, or whatever else it is you're looking for. So if you apply to the right schools where you're a good fit, the admissions committee will see that, because they know which students will do well on their campus. They know which students will thrive, and they know which students they need to round out a diverse class. And they'll accept you if you're the right person for that place. nearly all of them have a question on their application that says, why do you want to come here? The wrong answer is, I've heard of it, or it's an Ivy, or it has a low admission rate, or my parents want me to go there. The right answer is, it's the best fit for me. I will thrive there. I will come out with confidence, with knowledge, with skills, and go on into my future just perfectly. Okay. And I think Jody's going to talk about a sort of a tangential thing. We both kind of came up with the same answer, but she'll address a slightly different aspect of that. So I'll turn it over to you, Jody.
All right. Yeah. So I sort of have two pieces of advice that I think my students who are happiest in when we go through this process in the college search and application selection process, and who are happiest when they get to college. These students tend to follow this advice. And the first is, be realistic when creating a college list and make it manageable, right? So that means realistic, sort of piggybacking on what Deb said about fit, but realistic in terms of, are these safety schools, target schools, or reach schools? To determine that, there's a number of ways, and we can maybe get into that a little bit more as we talk tonight. But that would be the first thing. And in terms of a manageable college list means, not applying to 20 schools. Right? It may take just 10 minutes to review a college application, but it probably takes a good 15 to 20 hours to make a college application. And so, given that, what I've seen is if we were to sort of chart out the colleges and the number of colleges, the quality of the application goes down as the number of applications go up. So that would be my first piece of advice, that realistic and manageable college list. The second thing, this is more about sort of perspective as you go into this process, and that's, don't let this process be how you define your self-worth, how you define whether you're smart, how you define what your future will be, because it won't. College, it will be what you make of it, no matter where you go. And it's very easy, I think, in this process to get caught up in thinking that there's only a handful of schools where you will be happy, or if you don't get into those, that shows that you're not smart enough, or something like that. So I would just say, keep that in mind. And I would say for parents to keep that in mind too, maybe even more importantly, for the parents to keep that in mind as we go through the process. So really those two things.
Great. Thank you both for those. I like how they really do dovetail. I have a couple of follow-up questions while folks are warming up their questions out there. I'm curious, Deb, what you would say when you're determining fit. What are the qualities in a school you counsel people to look at when determining a fit?
Well, it's actually probably broader than most people think. Things like the culture, the vibe, what the other students are like. How diverse is the student population? How many come from outside the US? Where is it located? Is it at the top of a mountain? Is it in a valley? Is it in a city? Is it in a rural area? Is it a big school? Is it a small school? Is it a medium-sized school? What else? Do they have the departments that I think I'm looking for? And are they robust? Do they have the facilities that I'm looking for? Is it more conservative or more liberal in tone and politically? What else? I mean, just what do students do on weekends? Do they study all weekend, or do they go to the football game together and tailgate? Do they, are they off with the crew team somewhere competing? Do they have a free film series on campus every Friday night that everybody goes to? Is it all based around Greek life? If you're not part of a frat, or you don't go to frat parties, you won't have a social life. Who's sort of at the top of the social order at the school? Is it the smartest student? Is it the richest student? Is it the student who comes from the most well-known family? Is it the captain of the football team? You know, so some of these things are a little harder to get information about from online resources and statistics. It's easy to figure out where a school is, you know, and how big it is and things like that, but kind of getting the feel of it. And what a lot of the kids I work with end up telling me about why they apply to a school or don't is that they go to visit and they either like the vibe or they don't like the vibe. And sometimes it's even just that they like the architecture of the buildings. You know, I've had two people go to the same school, and one of them came back and said, yeah, those ivy covered buildings, you know, they look kind of old and decrepit and heavy. And now that just didn't sit right with me. And somebody else who came back and said, that's exactly what I'm looking for.
Yeah.
The first student ended up going to a school that had much more modern buildings, you know, metal and glass, very clean, seemed like they had sort of cutting edge equipment and things like that. So it's really very different for each student. I don't think there's a single school that you could say, well, it's going to be good for everyone. That's the right place for everyone to apply. Everybody should apply to that school. Not at all.
I work at the Teaching and Learning Center at Georgetown, and I teach first years, and I have for many years now. And just to support what you're saying, I think some parents might be wondering, well, why everything you just said is not about academics. And I want my kid to go to an academic school. But what we have spent a lot of time writing and researching about in the last few years is how important belonging and community is to academic success. And that's what we all want for our kids, right? We want the belonging and we want the academic success, and they're actually intimately tied together. So that's what I'm taking away from what you're saying, is that those community aspects are vitally important so that they can feel comfortable and then thrive in the classroom. Is that
Absolutely.
sort of what you see in your clients? Yeah, that's good to.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Good to hear.
If I can share something my son said to me yesterday, not yesterday, sorry. I'm saying yesterday, he wasn't here. Last year, I guess it was when he was home for break from college. So he's a junior at University of Maryland. And he had said to me, we're having this conversation. He said, you know, out of friends I've known who have transferred colleges, nobody's ever said, I didn't like the structure of the classroom or the facilities or the resources. He goes, it's always about that they didn't find either the right friend group or the right community. And that's all of his friends, which there haven't been many, but the ones who have wanted to transfer, it's always been for something about connection, you know, related to connection or lack thereof. So it's just something good to keep in mind. Thank
you. And Jody, I have a quick follow-up for you. And I hope people in the audience are thinking of their questions and again, dropping them in the chat. I do see one so far. But as a follow-up to your opener, Jody, when you're talking about a realistic list, could you give folks a sense of the factors to consider when you're talking about realistic? Because I know there's a lot of different opinions about Naviance, and those of you who don't know, Naviance is a program that will take your students' data, and Jody, correct me if I'm wrong, but it will take your students' data and make recommendations and give you a kind of scattergram of the likelihood of your acceptance to a variety of schools, and you can sort it by size of school and location of school and start to narrow your list using that tool. But I also wonder, sometimes it feels like that data might not be representative of a human being, since it is just data.
Yeah, no, it is. It's one piece of data. You know, I think there are a number of places to find data and then to look at it, and you have to sort of make sure you're interpreting it correctly, because I think that, you know, we almost have to be data scientists to sort of make a, you know, a good prediction on you know, what your chances are of getting into a college or not. But I think Naviance is good, but it is a little limited because what it plots out students with admissions outcomes anonymously, but in terms of GPA and test scores, what it doesn't provide is anything more than that. So it'll plot test scores, but you won't know if that student went test optional or not to a school. So that might not be really useful, because you might say, well, the student with this test score that's lower than mine got into the school, but that we don't know that that student submitted a test score. So it's a little limited in that way. It's limited in terms of rigor. It shows weighted GPA, but we don't know if those are honors or APs and things like that. So, and of course it doesn't tell you anything about the student either, right? Or the quality of the recommendation letters, and if they are bringing anything that meets institutional goals of a college, right? So, but it's still one piece. So that's good. I think that something that's useful is, instead of looking at admission percentages of students admitted, acceptance numbers, I would look at like what the average profile of a student looks like, and not so much you can look at GPA, but more look at, are they getting more A's than B's, right? Are they taking, sometimes colleges will get a little more granular on their websites and reporting sort of, 50% of our students, or in the case, I think I was reading today, Stanford, I think 93% of their applicants were in the top 10% of their class, right? So you have a sense of where you are, even though, BCC doesn't rank, but these are ways to, get an idea of like, what does the student who gets admitted look like? So because we can't just rely on the data. And with COVID especially, and the havoc it has wreaked on the college admissions process, it's really hard to look at admission rates and make a good judgment call on whether your child has a chance of getting into that school. So multiple sources of data. I would look at multiple sources. I would talk to BCC, your BCC counselor, and then there's people like me and Deb, right, who do this. But that would be my advice.
Okay, great. And while we're on the subject of evaluating what a school can offer the students and how they support their students, we have a question from the audience about recommending ways of determining good fits for kids with ADHD, or what might you look for in the school to see if your child will be supported.
Mm-hmm. Do you want to answer, Deb, or shall I?
No, go for it.
Okay. So ADHD in and of itself is sort of probably less of the focus and more on what accommodations a student needs. So, because, ADHD can sort of present itself differently in different kids. So it really would be about accommodations and what they can provide. And you can contact, every school has they might call it a different name, but they have, you either call Office of Disability Services, Office of Student Success, or Student Support, Academic Support Center. And you would ask them what type of accommodations they can provide, or these are the accommodations I need. Do you provide that? What would you need to be able to provide that to me? And then we, Deb and I have colleagues who work primarily just with students with learning differences. They definitely ask more questions. They always like to look at, what's the size of the staff? Can they actually not just be open to providing these accommodations, but in rolling it out, can they really deliver? So I think that's something important. But you can check, and you don't have to give them even your name in the beginning. You can just call them and say, I'm looking at this. Usually the services they provide, it'll be online as well. But I would absolutely do that. I would do that when you're working on your college list. Deb was talking about college fit, and that would be a very important aspect of, college fit. Is this school a good fit for you academically, based on what accommodations you might need?
So if I could just add a couple things to what Jody said. She mentioned that we have colleagues who specialize in working with students who have learning issues or differences or ADHD and other things. I actually also know, oh, by the way, some of the best ones in the country are right in Maryland. Yeah. Our colleagues in Maryland are amazing at that. Also, I have a friend in Maryland who works with kids who have food allergies or nutritional needs, if they have any of that. And another question to maybe ask them is, are there students you cannot accommodate? And they'll be honest with you if they don't think they can accommodate you. And if they can't, well, look somewhere else.
Absolutely.
Great, thanks, Tina. I was just going to drop our email in the chat. You can respond to any emails we send out if you want to connect with any of those professionals or follow up with Deb or Jody. I just want to put out a note that we can make that connection.
Also, the IECA website, the Independent Educational Consultants Association, which is a professional association we all belong to, website, and you can sort by state and by specialty. So if you're looking for someone specifically to help you with something, you can go to that website and find just the right people.
That's great. Thank you. I dropped the link in the chat for folks as well. Okay, so moving on, and I'm sorry, I just realized that I want to add Jody to the spotlight. Sorry about that, Jody.
All good.
Not spotlight you. Okay, so we have invited tonight folks from every grade level, and so I'm not, if people want to throw their child's grade level, so we have a sense of who's in the audience, that would be helpful. But thinking about that, and you were talking earlier, Jody, about that COVID is still with us and is still having an effect on students, whether it's social emotional maturity, or our worries as parents about learning loss, and then also how colleges, do you feel like it's back to normal, quote unquote, for admissions committees, or how is COVID still impacting this process?
I mean, I don't think it's normal, but I don't think it's returning to that either. I think it's just, sort of moving forward in a new reality. When COVID hit and everything went into lockdown, so we're in 2020, we didn't really have a sense of how that would impact admissions, whether it would be easier for the graduating class of 2021, if it would be sort of easier for them or harder. I think overall, what we saw was a big drop in admission rates, a big uptick in the number of applications. There weren't necessarily more students applying, but there were students were putting out more applications. There was more uncertainty. So colleges were hedging their bets by doing things like, deferring applications and then putting kids on a wait list to sort of see how things play out for them. And students were applying to more colleges. So there was, and with that uncertainty, when a college, they're working on models, right? They have a sense of what their yield, meaning the number of applicants that they admit who will accept their offer of admission. And they really need to come really close to that number, because if they're, 250 students over, that is really hard to absorb an extra 250 freshmen on campus, right? And find rooms for them and find classes for them and things like that. So it's really sort of changed how admissions happened previously. So yeah, I think it's a little bit harder. I think the admission rates went down a lot. Some schools saw, they received double the admission rates. So that's something that we're sort of grappling with. Things like early decision, applying to a school early decision, I think is even more important now if you can, and if a school is your first choice, because it takes away some of the guesswork on the college's side about whether you'll attend if they admit you. So I think that's a big factor. But yeah, it's definitely changed. But that's why it's getting back to what Deb said before, that's why it's even more important, I think, to hone in on this fit and to be the right, fit for our school, so that they can see that, because they know, colleges know their brand, right? They know the student who will do it well and who's most likely to come. And so again, honing in on that college fit and making your list, really intentional, I think is the way to go.
I'll add a little bit there. everybody suffered from the pandemic kind of in the same way. So, it doesn't really do any good to say, well, the pandemic really affected me, or it really affected the colleges. It really affected everyone. And I've heard parents say, but, my son couldn't play football for 2 years. Is that going to hurt him in the admissions process? Well, no, I mean, it affected everyone. They get that. They get that. Another thing that changed during the pandemic was that everything went online. So all their information sessions went online. They all videotaped college tours, put them up online. They did all of their interviews of students online. And a lot of that has remained, which is actually quite good, because you really can get a lot more information about a school from your computer sitting at home than you could before. And I think being able to have an online interview is really nice too. They used to use, but they were always in person, and of course interviews on campus, but having an online interview is really nice. And the increase in applications Jody mentioned was so extreme that most of the admissions offices were not able to hire additional readers to accommodate that. And so as a result, they spent less time on each application than they already were spending on each application. And people might be shocked to know that the average number of minutes an admissions officer spends on a single application is somewhere around 7 to 10. So you really have to be super clear in your application and really grab them with your essays so that they keep reading, because they're going through them really quickly.
Wow. That's really stark. Okay, so we're getting some questions in here. And historically, we've always had questions about our STEM oriented students. And so a question out there is, if your student is interested in sciences, how do colleges that are strongest in the science regard the IB program and the IB science classes versus AP? And so that would be great really for this BCC audience to help us understand IB versus AP in the college application process. And then I'd like to, we can have a larger STEM conversation overall.
Mhm. So my understanding, I mean, I've always seen, or I think if somebody wants to do IB in their STEM, they should, because I think that especially if we're talking about applying to, hyper competitive schools, even their STEM kids, they want them to still be able to develop the skills that I think IB is often known for, a lot about that sort of drawing connections across disciplines, an emphasis on writing. I mean, that's important for STEM as well. That being said, I could be wrong on this, but I sort of go with it always thinking that AP math might be like AP BC calculus or multivariable calculus might be more in line and appropriate for a student, and AP physics C, which is either mechanics or electricity magnetism, is probably a good choice for a potential engineer. But I'm definitely not, an expert in the like IB physics or IB math curriculum. I don't know, Deb, if you can.
No, I think you covered it pretty well. I mean, in general, colleges and universities love the IB program, and they love students who've gone through it, especially the liberal arts colleges, because as Jody mentioned, they're more broad, they're more interdisciplinary. I mean, the IB program is more just interdisciplinary. Taking classes like philosophy, and it's to the colleges who are looking for scholars, that's just exactly what they want. The AP classes are more focused and more monodisciplinary. So yeah, you're going to learn skills through those, but you won't learn necessarily how to combine biology and chemistry, or history and economics, or those kinds of things. So I guess it doesn't really matter which way you go. as long as you pick the classes that will be the most interesting to you, that you want to take, and you do well in them. In most cases, and also classes that your school offers. You know, BCC is really unique in that it offers both a full IB program and AP classes. So they're looking for context. They're looking to see what school you're coming from and what you've been offered, and if you've taken advantage of the highest level classes offered. They don't see AP classes as higher level than IB classes or the reverse. They're pretty much equivalent. The only class that might be considered higher than those would be an actual college class, or maybe even a community college class, depending.
Do you think it's helpful for STEM students to identify early? I'm sort of going off script here, but I'm curious, like, it feels increasingly like students come in with an idea. I don't know, I'm old, but when I went to college, so many people were undeclared. We had no idea what we went. That's why we were going to college. But now a lot of students come in knowing or having declared. Do you think that's important or not really?
I mean, I think it sort of depends on the school. I don't think students have to, you know, at 14 sort of decide they want to be an engineer or just, you know, specialize, especially. I know there's a lot of pathways, like there's, you know, Project Lead the Way and things like that at BCC, which are wonderful, especially for engineering, which students, if they want to even know what engineering is, that is usually their one opportunity to, especially, you know, so I think there's good things there, but to be a specialist at that age where you're supposed to be exploring, I don't know that I think that's the way to go. However, that being said, you know, if you are applying to programs where you have to apply into a specific program, like, you know, if you want to apply to engineering, not every school, but most schools will want you to apply into their school of engineering. You might be undeclared engineer, but they will be looking for a few things to see that you have at least, you know, see how you've taken advantage of it, right? Of this interest. Have you taken any classes like, you know, physics and calculus, or have you done Project Lead the Way, or have you done any activities that, you know, for someone who's interested in STEM would do? You know, context is everything. So I would say that you don't really have to, you don't have to sort of double down on engineering at 14 when you know, as a freshman. But if you think that you want, if you think you're interested in engineering, start at least take foundations of engineering, or principles of engineering. I'm sorry. So, you know, take that and see if you like it, right? And then kind of go from there. And if you like it, then the next year you can take the next, you know, class in the sequence, and you can, you know, if you're on track for higher level math and in physical sciences, then by all means.
I would say also a large number of students change their minds about what they want to study when they get to college. They take something freshman year that they've never experienced before, like sociology and anthropology or psychology or something that they didn't take in high school, and they're taken by it. That's still the most popular major students list on their applications is undecided. Having said that, I think if you can pick something that you think you might want to study in college, you might want to major in, and put that on your application, it helps. It certainly helps the admissions officers to determine whether they would be the right place for you and whether you would be the right fit for their program. And it helps them evaluate you as a student, as an incoming student. You know, they can picture you taking certain classes, belonging to certain clubs, et cetera, et cetera. And then if they need somebody just like that to fill the slots that are opening up when the seniors graduate in the robotics club there, then they'll need you. So yeah, you don't need to know when you're 14 or 15 or 16 exactly what you want to do. It's totally okay to say, I think I want to study this, but I've yet to be influenced.
That's good language. Thank you. A couple more questions from our audience. So you were talking earlier about all the online tours and interviews and virtual experiences that colleges are now creating. I know at Georgetown, there's a whole new world of that as well, and a lot of it's student created. I'm here, and I also just wanted to say we had a student panel last year that we are going to recreate, and they all said to a student, down to a student, that they spent so much time going through those, and it helped them whittle their list initially. So just spending time online, getting a sense of those tours and the campuses. So with all that said, when would you recommend the best time to go see a school? Again, one of our priorities as a committee is to try to take the pressure off a little bit and bring the temperature down. So I'm curious, where do you find the right time is to strike that balance? You're not going to say to your freshmen, okay, you're in high school now, we got to start visiting colleges. I assume you're not going to say that, but then when is the right time?
That's such a great question, because it is such a fine line. Really the best time to go visit would be August before you start college. Because then you know exactly who you are going to be when you step on campus as a freshman. But obviously you can't do that. So, back it up to, I would say, to take off the pressure of having to visit colleges that you're actually interested in during breaks and when college is in session, so you can actually see who's running around campus. Are they smiling? What do they look like, etc. You probably want to look at a couple of places your junior year in the fall. We always recommend that you go to a large state school. Go to your large flagship, University of Maryland in most of your cases, right? See what that's all about, what that's like. Go to a local or close by small liberal arts college. There are a number of those in the area as well. Go to a city school. We have, Washington, D.C. is right there. Baltimore is close. Go see how that's different. How's GW different from McDaniel and UMD? And get a sense for whether you feel more comfortable on a smaller campus or a less populated campus, or a larger campus, more spread out, or a more populated campus. Public versus private, they're a little different. And take it from there. But if you visit too early, you might find that you get kind of a stilted view of it. It doesn't appeal to you at that time, but a year and a half later, you're a different person, and that place might have been just the right fit. So it's a really tricky balance.
Yeah, I totally agree with that, Deb. I mean, it's, we're trying to balance what our schedules are like too. But before 11th grade, it just feels like I've seen students, they almost always evolve and mature and just developed into, a person who may not have appreciated, the school they went to, that they visited with their older sibling when they were in 9th grade and they got dragged along on those college visits. They had no opinion. They were there, they were walking around, but they had no opinion on it. It just didn't sink in. And I think, fall of 11th grade, if you can, if your schedule permits. And then I forget how many, I think it's maybe 2 days. I know students get maybe in 11th grade, but more likely in 12th grade, they do get a couple excused days that they can go ahead and visit colleges. But what I would say is, if possible, don't leave it all to spring break in 11th grade. And if possible, try to visit when the school is in session versus on their breaks, just so you really do get a sense of the vibe and the feel of the school.
Yeah, there are sort of these sweet spots during the year when you can go. There's some days off in January that BCC has that colleges don't. Obviously spring break is a big, easy one. In the fall, if you're not Jewish, the Jewish holidays are a good time to go and visit. And then I think you used to have off the day after Halloween and Election Day. I don't think that's the case this year, unfortunately, but then use the the days Jody mentioned that you're able to get an excused absence to visit colleges.
Great, thank you. Another question that came in, and that's a couple questions that came in that are tied to events we're doing later this year. So I just want to put a plug in for those. We are doing a college application timeline event coming up. So if you have questions about when to do what, it's a very detailed presentation. We have another college counselor from the area coming to support us on that. And we'll share the slides and the recording, and we can also put a link in the chat to our YouTube recordings, and you can check out that event from last year as well. So in terms of when to do what, like when to start writing your essays, when to visit, all of these things, we cover that in detail. And then another question that came in that I would love to hear what you have to say about, and that we also have an event later in the year. So if you have juniors, that might be useful for you. But if you have a senior right now and you have a student who's interested in applying internationally, do you have any tips for that? Seems to be increasingly common. I live on a corner and 2 out of 4 houses have kids studying in other countries. So I'm curious.
I think the benefit, especially, I mean, most students that I've worked with who have gone outside the country have gone either to Canada or the UK, right? A few other exceptions, but those processes are pretty transparent. That being said, same language, but meaning different things. So you have to, you'll look at their process, and you really have to sort of go a little bit slowly and make sure you're understanding there's different terms for different things, like faculty and major and department mean different things in like a UK school than or a Canadian school than it does in the US. So that's something to just keep in mind. But the British Council multiple times a year gives basically information sessions on the process of applying to the UK and takes students through that process. And I know the Canadian Embassy has hosted a few times in the past a similar thing, but you can reach out to the schools. It's pretty transparent in that it's mostly an academic decision. There are qualifications that they want their students to have, and it's less about are you a really good citizen and involved member of your community in high school. It's really more about either standardized tests or your school transcript, or maybe AP tests, those types of qualifications. So British Council, and then directly with the Canadian schools. I don't know of the Canadian equivalent for the British Council things. I don't know, Deb, if you do, but.
No, I don't know that either, but let me add just a couple of things about going to school in the UK, which are really different. Number one, you have to decide what you want to major in before you apply, because you can only apply to a particular major. So if you apply to study filmmaking, that's all you're going to study. That's it. These aren't liberal arts degrees. If you apply to study biotechnology, you're going to study biotechnology. And the programs in the UK are 3 years as opposed to 4 years. So that's kind of nice in one way. You get done faster and it's cheaper. But if you then turn around and want to apply to graduate school in the US, many of the graduate schools will require you to take another year of undergrad somewhere in order to be qualified to apply. To keep that in mind. And then the other thing is, if you get your entire education, let's say in the UK, and then you want to come back to the US to work and live, it's a little harder than if you want to live and work over there. You're going to be competing with all the students who went to school in the US for jobs in the US, unless it's an internationally minded job, in which case you might have an advantage. Just think about that as well. And so that's, I guess, all I have to say about the UK schools.
Okay, great. And our college counselor is here tonight with us, Kate Heald, and she mentioned that we do have a UCAS, the College Counseling Office has a UCAS account, which is apparently the Naviance for Europe sort of situation. And so they can use that account to apply. So definitely check in with Kate Heald as well.
But
And-
one last thing I forgot to say,
Yeah.
what I usually advise people to do is to get their undergraduate degree in the US at a US based school. But if they're really interested in spending time abroad or working internationally, do a year abroad.
Mm. That's great. Great advice. Okay, some other great questions that are coming in. Do universities track students when they visit and tour a campus? And is that helpful, showing serious interest? And just as the parent of a junior and someone who took the PSAT last year, and now that opens up the floodgates of those emails, and it can be really overwhelming. And you wonder, when I click on this, are they tracking me? Should I click on it to if I'm vaguely interested? So in terms of opening emails even, or visits or interviews, are colleges keeping track of that data and using it?
Many are, and they can track, for instance, when we could start by reaching out to a college, right, and saying, send me more information. When you do that, they have sort of locked into your email, and I don't understand the technology behind it, but they can sort of lock into your IP address, right? So that you can, when they send you an email, they can, not all schools do, but they can sort of measure, look at how long it's taken you to open the email, what are your click-throughs when you've opened it, right? Some colleges rely on that more than others, and some colleges are more transparent about how much they use it than others. However, for well before that technology was used, colleges definitely and deeply relied on like students' visits as a marker of whether they're likely to attend, because students who have attended a campus visit are more likely to attend the school once they apply, right? Most of us don't, say yes to a school and haven't visited, right? So, so that's something. With that being said, you can't make a full-time job out of it. I've heard stories of like, parents at home just managing the account and going in and open every email. And I mean, that's, you have to live your life. However, some schools track more than others in as a general rule, but there's plenty of exceptions. I would say the large publics don't as much. And the privates and the medium to small probably track a bit more. And that being said, the most selective schools, like the Harvards of the world, don't really have to track that because they sort of know that if they admit you, you're coming. They're so everybody else. I would think if you're interested and you're able to visit, definitely do a visit or attend an information session or connect with a rep at a college fair or when they're doing a high school visit.
Great, thanks. Another question that's come up is how do admissions officers separate applicants by region? Is it by state, county, or some other type of system? And how important is geographic diversity? Is that something that people should consider when building a list?
Yeah, they definitely do. Each college and university typically has a representative to BCC, someone who at the college who's responsible for knowing all about BCC and who's applying from BCC to their college this year. The University of Maryland divides their reps up by high school or county, but a place like Stanford might give a representative the entire state of Maryland to be responsible for. So it varies from school to school. But going back to FIT, I think it's all really important to get to know who the representative is to BCC from the schools you're interested in, because that person is often the first reader on your application. And if they know you, if they've met you at BCC when they came to give a talk, or they've interviewed you, or they visited BCC and someone was talking about you, they are going to be more likely to accept you. And So yes, the geographic diversity is very important. They are all having this sort of competition to see who can get the most kids from the most different places, which colleges can have all 50 states represented, get someone from all 50 states. Mind you, there's no one from Wyoming ever. Nobody lives in Wyoming, as far as I can tell. We were never able to get anybody from Wyoming. But yes, they're looking for also international diversity, people from as many different countries as possible. And the reason they do that is because they know from their experiences and from the research that students who are more different from one another learn more from each other. And so that's why they have this big competition going on. So if you have a background, like you lived in New Jersey for 8 years before you moved to Bethesda, you want to be sure they know that. And if you have an international background in some way, that's also going to be important to them.
Yeah. And if you're considering moving to Wyoming, do it now.
Yeah, go.
Got it. I think we're coming to the end of our time, so I want to put out the last pitch for questions. We've gotten some great questions in here. Do you have general advice on what, if anything, students should do earlier in their high school experience as freshmen and sophomores to prepare for college in any respect?
So, I mean, broadly, I would say, don't be afraid to sort of challenge yourself or take a class that you were really interested in, but you might not want to take it because somebody tells you, it doesn't look good on a college application or, something like that. I would say, broadly, take some risks, especially like ninth grade. If you are, I know some students, it's pretty common now. It used to be less so, but students might do an AP class in freshman year or something like that. If you think you can handle it, okay. But yeah, just a little bit thinking ahead, and maybe sometimes this is where parents can think ahead a little bit without getting too caught up in the college process. Is you want to balance, like, trying something so that when you get to, say, 11th grade, you're like, I wish I had known, in ninth grade, I should have done something. But the flip side is we don't want to, ninth graders don't need to be thinking about college so much. So, but I would say just start to explore. Like, if you really have an interest in a certain class and, or a certain subject, don't be afraid to try a class in that area. That would be, I think, my first. And get involved extracurricularly. I think that's something that, if some students are just not joiners and they don't want to, and that's okay, but then indulge a hobby or an interest that you have, even if it's not joining a club. My biggest thing would say, please read. It has only start reading. It has never hurt anybody. It's only helped. If I could that would probably be my biggest, become a reader. That would probably be the most helpful for anyone.
That's great advice. I would echo completely. Reading 15 minutes a night, anything you want to read, doesn't matter what it is, because not only will that be good for your vocabulary scores and for all of your classes that you take in high school, but you might figure out what you're interested in too. If you find yourself going to the same part of the library and getting books off the same shelves all the time, it might indicate that you have an interest in that. And then developing and growing that interest, and maybe even going down the rabbit hole a few times online and learning more about it, could lead to something that you really love doing, and might even lead you to a particular major in college and a particular career. So I'll echo also what Jody said about taking risks. If you've never gone ice skating before, try it. You might actually like it and be good at it. This is the time to fall on your face and fail and learn from it, and then move on and try something else until you find things that you're really authentically interested in. And, authenticity is one of the biggest buzzwords right now in admissions. Every college is looking for students who are authentic, who know who they are. They know what their strengths are. They know what their interests are. They know what their superpowers are. They know what they aren't. So figure out who you are in every way. Don't try to fit in to some mold that you think you're supposed to fit into, that the culture or the community or the school tells you should be. Just figure out who you are and be that.
I love that. Thank you. If we could, I'd love to end on a couple just rapid fire questions. How many, on average, how many colleges should students aim to apply to? 5, 8, 12, another number? Go.
I love 8.
Jody, what was yours? Sorry.
8.
8. Okay, magic number. Everyone hear that? Is it better to have a B in a more advanced class or an A in an easier class?
For the most selective college, the answer is an A in an advanced class.
That's their answer every time.
That was a trick question. Okay, got it. Does dual citizenship impact colleges in their decisions for accepting students?
I don't think so.
No.
No. Assuming it's one of the citizenships is the US.
Yeah.
No, I don't think so.
All right. Great. Any last thoughts, Tina? Anything that I have really left? This has been so great, and we've really gotten to almost every single question out there. Again, if you want to get in touch with either Deb or Jody, please reach out to our email, and we can connect you. If you have any follow-up questions, please keep an eye out for our emails with events. We are hosting the mock ACT and SAT in November and December, which you can see in that email. And we do rely on a few parent volunteers each Saturday. So if you're interested in helping out and becoming part of our committee, that's a great way to pledge your loyalty to us, because we really need your help there. And we will be having lots of other events where we can talk about early action, early decision, the timeline, all the good stuff, all the burning questions. So please come back. These recordings will be sent out via the email and posted on the YouTube channel. And I just want to give a big thank you to Deb Felix and Jody Siegel for sharing their expertise with us. We so appreciate you, and I learned something every single time. So thank you so much.
You're welcome. My pleasure. Good luck, everybody.